Hello everyone, it's really good to see you here. So today we are going to solve a Leetcode problem, which is course schedule. So what we have given is we have given some number of courses. So that are total number of courses labeled from 0 to num courses minus 1. And what we have to do is we have to given a prerequisite. And prerequisite, uh, let's suppose it's a vector. So prerequisite vector represents that if you have to read book AI, then you must have to read book BI, right? That means AI is dependent on the book BI. So you can see that you must take course BI first if you want to take the course AI, right? So for example, let's suppose if we have a pair of 0, 1, this indicates that to take course 0, you have to first take course 1, right? So if there is possibility that you can finish all the courses, then we have to simply return true in this case. Otherwise, just return false. So let's dive into its approach part. So what we firstly do is we have given, let's suppose this vector int L. We firstly traverse inside it and just make it an adjacency list. And why we are doing this? Because we want to find this condition. And what is this? You can see that number of connected components or number of edges towards each element we have to count, which is also known as the in degree. So you can see that to read book 1 you must have to read book 0, and to read book 2 you have to read book 1 as well as read book 0, right? With this is what is represented here, that if I want to read book 1 I have to read book 0. If I have to read book 2 I have to read book 1, also I have to read book 0. So this is the graph you can see. So using this, in the adjacency list what we are making is whatever the, so this is the independent variable, right? And this is the dependent variable that you must have to have this to have this, right? So what we do, we just take the independent variable as index and then push each element which are dependent to it. So you can see that in case of 0, 1 and 2 are dependent to it. In case of 1, 2 is dependent to it, and in case of 2, no one is dependent to it, right? So this way we just firstly make the adjacency list from our given grid. Then what we do, we just make each time, like you can see that each time we are encounter with some dependent variable, we are just going to increment its count, that is it's in degree. So you can see that 1 0. So once at index 0 1 is appended in our adjacency list, what we make, we just make it in degree as 1. Now when we come to 2, we increment it firstly 1 and then again 1, because it is dependent on uh, two components here, 0 and 1, right? So after getting this, so you can see that since 0 has no incoming edges, that's why it's become 0. It's in degree 0. 1 has only 1, so it's in degrees 1, and 2 has two incoming edges, that's why it's in degrees 2. So why we are talking about in degrees in this case? Because that help us to find out what are the dependencies of one course with the other course. And if the in degree becomes 0, that means that course is independent. So at the end of it, we are just counting the number of times are in degree of prerequisite uh, each prerequisite course becomes 0. That means let's suppose if we have let's suppose we have n equals to 3, that means we have 3 courses, and end of it if our in degree also become 3, that means that we are able to read all books, because we are able to overcome the dependencies. But there may be possibilities, like let's suppose if we want to read book 1 and 0, and there is also one condition that if you want to read book 1 you have to read book 0. So let's suppose if we have these two elements inside our given vector, so you can see that to read book 1 you must read book 0, and to read book 0 you must read book 1, which is also given here. So there are total of 2 courses to take, right? To take course 1 you should have finished a course 0, and to take course 0 you should have to finish course 1. It is not possible, right? So this case is avoided. So yeah, so this is the approach. So once we are done with the adjacency list and the in degree, what we do, we just come and iterate throughout our in degree, and whenever, if in degree is 0 for any particular index, then what we do, we just append that particular index in our queue. So let's see why we are doing this. So let's suppose in the first case you can see that in degree of 0 is 0 only, so we are appending 0. Now after appending 0, we come here. So what we do, we just iterate throughout the 0 index. So firstly we come to this one. So what we found, that in degree of 1 is 1, we just decrement it, and then once our in degree becomes 0, we have to append that particular index in our queue. So now this is exhausted, we increment 1, and also since we are iterating throughout our 0 index, that's why we have to encounter these two elements. Now we come to 2, you can see that its in degree now become 1, and we are done with this 0. Now we again come to q, we have 1, so we just go here 1, and then it is connected with 2. So what we do, so we come to this position, we just decrement this in degree to 0, it's also become 0, and now this is exhausted and we append 2 to it, right? And once we come to 2, we don't find any element, that's why 2 is also exhausted. So in this particular time, so you can see that here our in degree becomes 0 one time, and here also our in degree becomes 0 one time, and also at the time of this our in degree is already 0, that's why total of our in degree become 3, like the count is become 3, right? So this is 1, and this becomes 0 at some point, and this also becomes 0 at some point, that's why the sum of these two will be 3. Now you can see that since our prerequisite is also 3 and our count is also 3, that's why we return true. So this is the overall approach, and it's become more clear once we go to the coding part of it. So let's see here. So n is the number of courses and m is the prerequisite size, right? And we have to do this because then there may be possibility that these two are not same, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to make an adjacency vector and then an in degree vector. So what firstly we are iterating throughout our prerequisite vector, and what we are going to do is we are going to push back the first element inside at the index of our first element, right? So the zeroth element is pushed at the index 1th element, and you can see it like this. Let's suppose 0 is independent, 1 is dependent, so at index 0 1 is pushed, right? At index 0 2 is pushed, so like this is what it is doing. And the in degree of prerequisite, that is at this particular index, so our in degree size is already n comma 0, and we are incrementing each time we found some element. That means once we found 1, we just increment it. Once we found 2, at first index or at 0th index, so if we consider 0 comma 1, now at 0th index, if we found any element at 0th index, we just increment its count because that is the dependent variable, and because of which it is going to increase the in degree, right? So once we are done with this, there is a C count which is initially 0, that is going to have all the different number of courses whose in degree becomes 0 at the end, right? So here you can see that there is a queue. So firstly we just iterate throughout our in degree, and if it is 0, then we just push back into our queue, and also we increment the count C, right? And after that what we do, we just simply run a while loop till the point our queue is not empty. We just store our front value of our queue in our temp variable, and then we iterate throughout our adjacency list of temp variable, and then each time we encounter the value x, we just decrement its in degree, and if at any point of time our in degree becomes 0, then we just increment rc count and then we push back that x. That is what we are doing here, right? Once we encounter 1, we just make it in degree 0. Once it becomes 0, we have to increment our c count and also push back that particular index here, right? So at the end of it, we have to simply check that if our c is equals to n is the number of courses. So now let's try to run this up. So yeah, this is the approach to solve the problem. Course schedule, and if you want to access the code, then you can check the GitHub link given in the description. And before going anywhere, do like, share and subscribe to this channel, and thanks for watching.